Welcome to LaughNapkin. Today I have 3 stories for episode 7 of r/MaliciousCompliance. So hit that thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, and let's get into it. Don't pay me my wages, I won't serve your customers. So this is something that isn't all that uncommon in the service industry, but I thought I would share. Working as a bartender for a hotel that I enjoyed being part of, I'd always had a huge interest in making cocktails, so when I scored this job, I was over the moon. On top of that, it had a very good rate of pay and said that although they wouldn't pay overtime rate, they would pay overtime hours worked. This isn't bad at all for full-time in the service industry, as normally you're paid a salary and then massively overworked without any extra money for the insane hours worked. So enter new general manager and a business consultant. They had been recruited to try and save the restaurant bar some money as it's making no profit whatsoever. Now there's an obvious reason as to why it makes no money in the restaurant. The bar made 3 times the profit expected, and that is as follows. Employing a team of 50 people per day every day is a huge drain on your income when your income does not compensate. Being top heavy in managers with high salaries is beyond stupid. Employing 3 incompetent people to do 1 competent person's job is the equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot. So the bar operates on a team of 12 people during the week, whereas the restaurant operates on a team of 30 per day. We average a maximum of 3 bartenders and 1 barback working a busy shift, and maybe 2 bartenders on a quiet shift. The bar is open until 1 a.m. every day, and then opens back up at 6 a.m. so it has long opening hours. Staff start and finish times are staggered to give the most effective use of staff hours when needed. The general manager and business consultant decide that they need to make cuts on overtime hours. Sensible decision. But they decide to start making cuts in the wrong places. Bartenders first. A meeting is called and all bartenders attend. It's explained to us that we'll be receiving less overtime hours, so expect to be put on less shifts. More time at home? This is a win-win so far. What they neglected to tell us is that they would be pulling people from the busiest shifts, as these had the latest close times and often accrued the most overtime hours. So we ended up short-staffed, being hit with complaints for slow service, and the staff started to get annoyed and look for work elsewhere. We ended up increasing our overtime hours as we had to work later than expected because we had less staff than needed to do a quick close down. 2 months later, and the remaining staff start muttering things about their pay being much lower than usual. So we club together and start working out how much we've lost and how much we're being paid. It turns out that no one has been paid for a single hour over their contracted minimum. Now to some people, this may not be much, but for us it's anything between 40 and 80 hours a month extra. I spoke to the new general manager in a meeting in which business consultant declared he had to attend. The conversation went as follows. Me, it's come to my attention and the attention of many other staff that we're no longer being paid for the hours that we work. Is there an error in payroll or is something else going on? Payslips don't reflect where we're working and our hours accumulated have been changed to salary. General manager, well, we've had to cut costs. Like we said several weeks ago, as a result, you aren't getting as much overtime, so your pay has dropped. Now, I'm a stickler for counting my hours worked. I take photos and film when I clock in and out every day. I then enter those times into a spreadsheet that automatically calculates normal hourly wage, deducts time taken for breaks, and then adds additional overtime. This operates on a monthly basis and pumps out a figure which should reflect my monthly wage. 99.9% of the time it was correct. The only time it wasn't was where the odd 15 minutes was missed off by payroll, but I really didn't care about that. I pull out my laptop, hook it up to the projector, and go through each cell and explain how it works, much to the amazement of both general manager and business consultant. I then pull out my last 2 months' hours worked, compare them to my new pay slips, and have a slideshow running on the other half of the screen with pictures of my documented clock in and out times. With this piled against them, they decide to try and sidesweep it under the proverbial rug. Their idea is that if they just ignore it, I'll drop it and find work elsewhere like the others. However, after 2 weeks of no response, my team and I make an ironclad deal between ourselves. If we aren't getting paid for more than our minimum hours, then we won't work a single minute more. We're all on a busy weekend immediately after payday. No one has been paid for their extra hours, so the plan goes into effect. We all monitor the time and one by one start immediately dropping what we're doing, apologizing to the customers, and leave. It takes an hour before the general manager figures out what's happening, at which point there are 2 people working a crazy busy bar. I'm approached by general manager. General manager, where are the others? Why have they left? What's going on? Me, well, we don't get paid to work more than our minimum, so why should we bother continuing on past our paid hours? The others have gone home, because they know that they won't be paid for anything past that time. General manager, that's ridiculous. You can't just walk out and leave the place like this. Me, actually, I think you'll find that we can and will. Now, the bar was busy. Having only myself and one other on it at this point meant we were losing money through lack of service, slow service, and through apologizing for bad service in general. This very quickly started piling up into the thousands. Me, I think you should be aware that my shift ends in the next 15 minutes, and the other bartender will be leaving in the next 30 minutes. This was at 8:30 p.m. on a Friday night. For some reason, the general manager just ignored me and scurried off back into the restaurant. 15 minutes later, I left. 15 minutes after that, my colleague left. 15 minutes after that, the entire bar effectively went under. We all met in another venue with our phones turned off, enjoying a drink and laughing about what had happened. We were pulled into a meeting with HR and management the following week to discuss our behavior. I explained the situation and told them unless we're paid for our overtime over the past 2 months and every month following, it would happen every weekend and there was literally nothing they could do about it. Now, this is completely legal. If you aren't being paid, you don't have to work. They threatened to immediately dismiss the entire team if we didn't change our attitudes. We promptly folded our arms in defense as one of the team members calmly but firmly said, "Do it. Have fun running the bar with no staff." We were all told to leave the premises there and then. In the following months, we all learned that the place never had recovered as we sent out messages on a local bar group stating that whoever worked there would not be treated properly and would not receive the correct pay. It switched from a high-end cocktail bar down to a standard pub-style bar, and then finally closed altogether for renovations. The hotel was eventually taken over by a global company and underwent extensive renovations. We all found jobs fairly quickly after leaving, but never saw our 2 months unpaid overtime, sadly. The master of malicious compliance. A few years ago, I was in the process of getting my master's degree. Our group for that particular degree was fairly small, about a dozen of us when we started, and a few dropped out along the way. So the lectures and seminars were tiny, and we all got to know each other very well. It wasn't uncommon for classes to continue for several hours over beer down at the pub. All in all, a pretty great way to learn. The leader of the program, who also taught one of the units, was awesome. A very anti-establishment punk who just wanted to get on with teaching his subject his way. The higher-ups were in the process of trying to change how everything worked, basically making it much tougher on the students and a lot more bureaucratic because reasons. One thing they changed was the extensions for assignments. The way it used to work was you'd have a deadline, but if you needed an extension, the lecturer for that unit could grant one at their discretion. The new process meant that if you needed an extension, you'd have to apply to the extension board, and you wouldn't know if you'd had it approved or not until well past the deadline. You basically had to gamble. If you applied for the extension and handed in past the deadline, and your extension wasn't granted at all or wasn't granted for enough time, you'd get a failing mark for being late. It was super stressful, especially for those of us with ongoing reasons for needing them. Example, me with my health issues. This angered the program leader a lot. As far as he was concerned, it's his course. He knows us all well enough to smell bullcrap excuses. His say should be enough to grant any extension. He carried on handing them out anyway while they were in the process of changing the system, getting into a lot of trouble in the process. But once it was fully changed over, his power to grant them was gone. There was only one major assignment left at this point, the thesis. Most of our class ended up needing extensions for it. Sick children, bereavement, illnesses, other life stuff that meant you couldn't spend 50 to 60 hours every week on it to meet the deadline. We were all preparing to take the gamble, collect as much evidence as possible, and submit all of the ridiculous paperwork in hopes that our degree wouldn't be taken away from us thanks to a board of pencil pushers who didn't even know us. A couple of days before the deadline, the course leader gets in touch to gleefully inform us that the morons in charge took away his extension powers, but not his powers that changed the actual deadline dates. He figured the best thing to do was to move the deadline 6 months into the future, giving us all more than enough time to not only finish our work, but keep improving on it as an extra special screw you to the people stressing out his students and messing with his course. We all graduated, and they couldn't do much about it because he was working perfectly within the rules. Sure, I'll shut down all but one cooling system for the computer server to save you money. I didn't have any hand in this. In fact, I was caught in the fallout of this malicious compliance alongside every student and every art program in the college. The fallout was drastic, to say the least. I'm taking a visual design program at a community college. It's the middle of exam month, and we're working to finish a semester-long project that doubles as our final exam. Naturally, everyone is working overtime to get things finished. I was in the computer lab working near the back. The place I'm working on is also near one of the server banks. I'm wrapping up my work and getting ready to submit, when suddenly the file transfer stops and it says that I've lost connection to the server. No big deal. I figure that it's probably the fact that the servers are overloaded. Up until other people in the lab are asking if anyone else lost connection to the server. That's when I noticed the distinct smell of something akin to melted plastic. A few minutes of investigating and the cause is found. Turns out that all the server banks are cooked. Completely. Everyone in the lab agrees to email the person who handles those servers, who just so happens to be our teacher. He shows up a half hour later with a wide grin on his face. Teacher is absolutely giddy. He announces after sitting against the table at the front of the room for 10 minutes, "Teacher, sorry everyone, but it looks like the servers are going to be down for the remainder of the semester. Be sure to send a thank you letter to the dean of the college." Teacher later went on to explain that the dean ordered him to shut down the cooling system of the servers and switch to one centralized system. But he protested it and tried to explain that the system would fail, which would subsequently cause all the banks to overheat. However, the dean simply told him to do it, or else she'd fire him and hire someone who would. Teacher is known to fight any decisions made involving handling the Macs and everything related to them, primarily because he set the system up himself, and everyone that's been hired to help him handle it messes it up in some form or another. So he decided to execute some malicious compliance. We haven't been told that the backup servers were affected, nor how much this will cost the college, but the servers hold all the data for every art program in the college, so a lot of people have been affected. Moreover, with the servers effectively being down, we can't submit our final exam. We've been told that we have to print our projects out and that the expenses will be covered by the college. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making it. Don't forget to join my Discord if you want to submit your own story or just be part of the LaughNapkin community. And please, consider subscribing as it helps me out big time.